They pay me $500,000 a year to drive. The cargo is classified. The route, a ghost on any map. They gave me a list of rules. I broke one. Now, the static on the radio is learning my name, and the face in my rearview mirror isn't always mine. This is my last log. This is how it began. Log entry 1, Marco Ribeiro, designation. Well, they just call me the ferryman. This is my 3rd week on the Rota Sombra, the shadow route. That's not its official name, of course. Officially, it's the BR-319, a decaying ribbon of asphalt cutting straight through the heart of the Amazon basin, connecting Manaus to Porto Velho. In the rainy season, most of it is an impassable river of mud. But my employer, Synapse Logistics, has arrangements. They own the night on this road. My job is simple. Pick up a sealed, anonymous container in one Black Ops-looking facility and drive it to another, identical facility, 800 kilometers away. No questions, no peeking, just drive. For the kind of money they're paying, I'd haul a live nuke through hell with a smile. Or so I thought. My rig is a beast. A heavily modified Scania R730, armor-plated windows, reinforced chassis, more auxiliary lights than a movie premiere, and a satellite communications suite that looks like it belongs on a warship. The cab is my kingdom. The smell of worn leather, stale coffee, and the faint tang of ozone from the electronics. It's been my home for 20 years in one form or another. I've hauled logs in Canada, produced through the Andes, and machinery across the Australian outback. I've dealt with hijackers in Mexico and ghost lights in the Atacama. I'm not some fresh-faced kid spooked by shadows. I'm a professional, which is why the protocol briefing they gave me felt like a joke. A laminated card sitting here in the cup holder next to my lukewarm coffee. Protocolo Sombra, Regra da Estrada Meia-Noite, the Midnight Road Rules, a list of 17 directives written in cold corporate font. Most are standard procedure. Maintain speed, mandatory rest stops at designated secure zones, radio silence unless absolutely necessary. But a few of them are straight out of a campfire story. I remember the hiring manager, a man with a face so bland he seemed designed to be forgotten, sliding the card across the polished table. "These are not suggestions, Mr. Ribeiro," he'd said, his voice as flat as the tabletop. "They are mission parameters. Your compliance is linked directly to your compensation and your continued well-being." I'd laughed. I'd told him I'd once had a dispatcher in Alberta who swore you had to leave a shot of whiskey on your dashboard to appease the Wendigo. Corporate superstition, I figured. Ways to keep the drivers on edge, focused. A psychological trick. Now the drone of the engine in the crushing, absolute darkness of the Amazon feels less like a comforting rumble and more like the only thing keeping the silence at bay. And that silence, it feels hungry. Let me tell you about some of these rules. Rule number 7, ignore any sound that resembles a human voice, cry, or scream originating from beyond the road's edge. Your vehicle is soundproofed for your comfort and safety. Trust the soundproofing. Right. The first time I heard a faint cry like a woman weeping, my heart jumped. Instinct screamed at me to hit the brakes. Years of conditioning. You stop, you help. But then I remembered the briefing. Bandits, pirates of the asphalt, a classic, tragic lure. They use a recording or force a woman to cry to get you to stop your rig, and the moment you step out, you're swarmed. It's a sad, brutal world. So, I pushed the throttle, the engine's roar drowning out the sound. I told myself it was a smart, professional decision, a cold calculation, but a small part of me, the part that's still human, felt a pang of guilt. The soundproofing isn't perfect. I could still hear it fade behind me. Then there's rule number 11. Under no circumstances should you stop for fauna on the road, regardless of its appearance or state of distress. Maintain your speed and trajectory. The vehicle is equipped to handle impacts. This one felt cruel, but I rationalized it too. A tapir or a capybara can wreck a normal car, but this truck, it's a fortress on wheels. Swerving for an animal, especially at night on a wet road, is how you end up wrapped around a ceiba tree. The alternative is a dull thud and a clean conscience, knowing you didn't risk your life, your rig, and your multi-million-dollar cargo for a jungle rodent. The first time it happened, it was a jaguar, a magnificent, powerful creature, standing frozen in the high beams, One of its forelegs bent at a sickening, unnatural angle. It wasn't scared. It just watched me approach, its eyes reflecting the light with an intelligence that felt ancient. I kept my foot steady on the accelerator. I braced for the impact that never came. At the last second, it didn't leap away. It slid. It moved sideways into the impenetrable wall of vegetation with the fluid, effortless motion of a drop of oil on glass. There one moment, gone the next. My brain refused to process it. A trick of the light, a flicker of motion my tired eyes misinterpreted. It had to be. But the rule that's been bothering me the most, the one that's been sitting at the back of my mind like a splinter of ice, is rule number 3. Should you observe anomalous lights within the forest, defined as any illumination not corresponding to vehicle headlights, lanterns, or natural fire, you are to immediately extinguish all exterior and interior lights. Coast in absolute darkness. Do not engage the engine brake. Wait a minimum of 5 minutes in total silence before resuming your journey. This was the one I couldn't explain away with bandits or road safety. Anomalous lights? What, like UFOs, swamp gas, bioluminescent fungi that corporate wants to keep secret? It felt like pure, unadulterated nonsense. A test, maybe. To see if I was the kind of suggestible fool who would follow bizarre orders without question. For 2 weeks I drove, and the rule was just words on a card. The jungle was a black, featureless wall on either side of my headlights. Then came last night. I was on a long, straight stretch, about 200 kilometers south of the Trans-Amazonian Highway intersection. The rain had finally stopped, and the air was thick and heavy, smelling of wet earth and decay. The only sound was the thrum of my engine and the hiss of the tires on the damp asphalt. It was hypnotic. Then I saw it, to my right, deep in the trees, maybe 50 meters in. It wasn't a flashlight beam. It wasn't a fire. It was a soft, gentle pulse of deep blue light, like a captured piece of the twilight sky. It would swell from a pinprick to a soft globe the size of a fist, hold for a second, and then shrink back to nothing. It was beautiful, and it was completely, utterly impossible. My mind raced through a Rolodex of rational explanations. A new species of firefly? Some kind of glowing moss I'd never heard of? But the light was too steady, the color too pure. It didn't flicker, it breathed. For a moment I just stared, mesmerized. Then I remembered the rule, a cold, ridiculous instruction on a laminated card. My first instinct was to laugh, to dismiss it, to floor it and leave the weird light show behind. But I wasn't being paid $500,000 to follow my instincts. I was being paid to follow the rules, all of them. With a deep sigh, feeling like the world's biggest idiot, I reached for the control panel. My calloused finger hovered over the master light switch. This is stupid, Marco, I thought. You're a grown man, a veteran of the road, and you're about to play hide-and-seek with a damn fungus. But the forgotten manager's flat voice echoed in my head. Continued well-being. I killed the headlights. The world vanished. I've never known a darkness so complete. The cab was plunged into a blackness so absolute it felt physical, like being wrapped in velvet. The oppressive, living darkness of the deep jungle, far from any hint of civilization. My breath caught in my throat. The familiar, comforting rumble of the Scania's engine was suddenly a profane intrusion in a sacred silence. As per the rule, I took my foot off the accelerator, letting the truck's immense momentum carry it forward in a long, silent coast. I didn't touch the engine brake. The silence that rushed in was deafening. I could hear the frantic pounding of my own heart, the creak of the leather seat under my weight, the almost imperceptible hum of the onboard electronics. Outside, the jungle wasn't silent. It was a billion tiny noises, insect clicks, nocturnal calls, the drip of water from massive leaves, a symphony of life that had been masked by my engine. And I was now a ghost, drifting through the middle of it. My eyes, straining to adjust, saw nothing but the faint red glow of the emergency power indicator on the dash. I forced myself to look to the right, where I'd seen the light. It was still there, a single pulsing heart of blue in a void of black. And then it moved. It didn't flicker through the trees. It didn't bob or weave. It detached from its position and floated, smooth and silent, out from the tree line. It moved with a purpose that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. It stopped directly parallel to my cab, hovering in the air over the shoulder of the road, maybe 20 meters away. It just hung there, its soft, rhythmic pulse the only thing happening in the entire universe. There was no sound, no hum of a drone, no flutter of wings. A silent, floating orb of impossible blue light. It stayed there for what felt like an eternity, though my watch later told me it was only 90 seconds. It felt inquisitive, like it was looking at my darkened truck, at me, and wondering what I was. Then, as silently as it appeared, it drifted back into the jungle and was gone. I sat there, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. My mind, my rational, professional, seen-it-all mind, was a frantic mess. It was a drone. A sophisticated, silent drone from a rival corporation or the government spying on Synapse's operations. It had to be. That was the only explanation that came close to making sense. But who would fly a single unmarked drone out here in the middle of nowhere? And why the bizarre light display? I waited. The 5 minutes mandated by the rule felt like 5 hours. When the timer on my phone finally chimed, the sound made me jump out of my skin. I took a deep, shuddering breath and flicked the lights back on. The high beams sliced through the darkness, revealing the empty, wet road ahead. Everything was normal. Just the road, the rain-soaked trees, the endless night. I put my foot down and the engine roared back to life, a welcome, thunderous noise that pushed the terrifying silence away. I tried to put it out of my mind. It was a drone, a weird corporate espionage drone. Case closed. But the feeling of being watched didn't go away. A few kilometers down the road, my system started to glitch. The GPS, a military-grade unit that had never failed me, suddenly showed my location as being in the middle of the Rio Negro, 50 kilometers to the east. It flickered for a minute, showing me submerged in impossible geography, before resetting itself. Then the radio crackled. It's an encrypted channel, always silent unless a dispatcher is calling. But it wasn't a voice. It was a low, rhythmic static, a soft shh thump, almost like a heartbeat. I shut it off completely. The rest of the drive was a white-knuckle affair. Every shadow seemed to move. Every strange animal call from the jungle sounded like a mimicry. Which brings me to tonight. I'm back on the same stretch of road, my hands slick with sweat on the wheel. I told myself it was a one-time thing, a fluke, but as I rounded the bend, my stomach plummeted into my shoes. They were there again, but this time, it wasn't one light. It was 3. Arranged in a perfect, equilateral triangle, all pulsing in perfect, silent synchronicity with each other. They were waiting for me. I felt a cold dread wash over me, a fear I hadn't felt since I was a child. This wasn't a drone. This wasn't swamp gas. This was something else. As I watched, frozen, they did something that shattered the last of my composure, the last of my professional cynicism. They mimicked me. I instinctively flicked my high beams off and on again, a nervous tick. And out in the darkness, the 3 blue lights blinked back at me. Once, twice, they were copying me. They knew I was here, they were intelligent, and they were learning. I thought they were just stories to scare new drivers. Now I don't know what to think. The rule book is sitting in the cup holder, its laminated edges seeming to gleam in the dim light of the cab. 17 rules. I've only had to follow 3 of them. What in God's name do the others expect me to do? If you want to find out what's really hiding on the edge of this road, subscribe and turn on notifications. The investigation is just getting started, and I've got a terrible feeling that I'm not the one in the driver's seat anymore. Log entry 2. I don't know what day it is. Time on this road, it stretches and compresses. The sun comes up. I pull into a designated Synapse way station, a sterile concrete box with a fuel pump, a cot and a meal dispenser, and I try to sleep. But there's no rest. Every time I close my eyes, I see 3 blue lights, pulsing in the darkness, blinking back at me. A perfect intelligent echo. That single moment rewired my brain. The hardened skepticism I've carried for 20 years on the road, my armor against the strange and the unexplained, it didn't just crack, it shattered. It's gone. In its place is a cold, gnawing thing that squirms in my gut. fear. But it's more than that. It's a terrifying, unwelcome understanding that the world is not what I thought it was. The laminated rule card isn't corporate nonsense. It's a goddamn survival guide. And I'm a slow learner. After the incident with the mimicking lights, I drove like a man possessed. My knuckles were bone white on the steering wheel, my eyes scanning the impenetrable wall of green and black on either side of me, searching for movement, for another pulse of impossible blue. Nothing. The jungle kept its secrets. The rest of the trip to Waystation Gamma was uneventful, but the silence was worse than the phenomenon itself. It was a loaded silence, pregnant with possibility. My mind, now untethered from the anchor of reason, began to play tricks on me. A strangely shaped tree became a lurking figure. The call of a nocturnal bird sounded like a mocking whisper. The professional calm I've always prided myself on was gone, replaced by the jittery paranoia of a prey animal. When I finally pulled into the high-fenced, brightly lit compound of the Waystation, the relief was so intense, my legs almost buckled as I stepped out of the cab. These places are eerie in their own right. No staff. Everything is automated. A key card grants you access to a Spartan room with a bed harder than a tombstone and a shower with precisely 5 minutes of hot water. They are islands of sterile order in a chaotic living world. Before, I found them dehumanizing. Now, I saw the concrete walls and razor wire for what they were. Fortifications. We aren't just resting in these places. We're hiding. Sleep was a joke. I lay on the cot, staring at the ceiling, the memory of the lights on a loop in my head. I needed answers. Synapse Logistics. The name itself is opaque, clinical. I grabbed my laptop. Sitting on the edge of the cot, with the anemic glow of the single light bulb painting the room in shades of grey, I began to dig. I'm no hacker, but I know my way around the internet. I started with a simple search. Synapse Logistics. The first few results were for their public-facing operations. Shipping, air freight, a clean, professional website with stock photos of smiling people in hard hats. Nothing about a high-risk, high-reward trucking division in the middle of the Amazon. I tried searching for the route, BR319 Special Cargo or Rota Sombra. Nothing. Not a blog post, not a forum comment, not a whisper. It was a digital black hole. It was as if this entire operation, my truck, these way stations, this road, none of it officially existed. The only proof I had was the $500,000 wired to my offshore account and the rule card sitting on the nightstand, mocking me. Frustrated, I abandoned the laptop. If the answers weren't out there, maybe they were in here, in the truck, the previous driver. They'd told me he'd retired. Found the isolation too stressful. Now I wondered if that was the truth. Was there something he'd left behind? A clue? A warning? I spent the next 2 hours tearing the cab apart. I pulled up the floor mats, checked behind the seat cushions, unscrewed paneling in the sleeper bunk. Nothing. Just dust, old receipts for gas stations hundreds of miles from here, and the faint lingering smell of another man's sweat. I was about to give up when my fingers brushed against a loose piece of trim under the main dashboard near the firewall. It was almost invisible. My curiosity piqued, I worked my fingertips into the gap and pulled. A small rectangular panel popped open, revealing a shallow cavity, clearly not factory standard. And inside, wrapped in an oil-stained rag, was a book. A small black, moleskin-style notebook. My heart began to hammer against my ribs. I unwrapped it. The cover was worn smooth, the corners frayed. I opened it to the first page. The handwriting was neat, precise. Jonas Ferreira, Ferryman First Log, October 3rd. I sat there under the flickering fluorescent light of the Waystation garage, and I read. For the first 20 pages, it was exactly what you'd expect. Notes on fuel consumption, road conditions, complaints about the food dispensers, the mundane chronicle of a fellow trucker. Then the entries started to change. October 19th saw a flicker in the trees tonight. Weird. Looked like a camera flash, but there's nothing out here. Must be tired. A few pages later, October 24th. The flickers are back, not flashes, more like blue sparks. They seem to keep pace with the truck for a few kilometers, then vanish. I'm definitely cutting back on the coffee. The entries grew shorter, more frequent. The neat handwriting started to get a little looser. a little more slanted. November 5th. I followed rule number 3 tonight. The blue lights. They're not sparks. They're globes. They floated out of the woods. Just watched me. I felt naked, scanned. I think this job is starting to get to me. A chill, completely unrelated to the damp night air, crept up my spine. I was reading a ghost story, and I was the ghost who had come after. I kept reading, my eyes flying across the pages. Jonas's paranoia was a mirror of my own. He wrote about the phantom cries in the night, about the animals that seemed to move wrong. And then came the drawings. In the margins, next to descriptions of the lights, he'd started to sketch spirals. Simple at first, then more and more complex, interwoven, like galaxies or fingerprints. November 16th, the radio. God, the radio. There are voices in the static. Not Portuguese, not anything I know. It sounds like clicking and whispers. The dispatcher says the line is clear. Am I going crazy? The spirals are in the sound, I can hear the shape of them. His handwriting was a barely legible scrawl now. The last few pages were almost entirely filled with the frantic, overlapping spiral drawings, a vortex of ink. And then the final entry. It was written in thick, heavy strokes, the pen having torn through the paper in places. December 2nd. I saw it. It stood on the road. I stopped. Broke the rules. It doesn't have a face. It has a geometry. It's not the cargo. It's never been the cargo. The road is the vein. We are the blood. It's inside my... The entry just stopped, mid-word. The rest of the book was empty. I closed the notebook, my hands trembling. Jonas hadn't retired. Jonas had broken the rules, and whatever was out there had collected him. The knowledge was a physical weight, pressing down on me, squeezing the air from my lungs. This wasn't just a job anymore. It was a gauntlet. And every night I was running it again. I put the logbook back in its hiding place. It was a cursed object, but it was the only Bible I had. My sleep that day was a black, dreamless pit of exhaustion. When the automated alarm woke me, it was night again. Time to drive. Time to feed the road. Tonight, the jungle feels different. It knows I know. The air is thick with a palpable sense of anticipation. Every kilometer is a test of will. I'm gripping the steering wheel, my eyes flitting between the road, the mirrors, the dark tree line. And I hear it. It starts faintly, almost lost in the drone of the engine. Laughter. The high-pitched, innocent laughter of a child. It's coming from just outside my passenger side window. Rule number 7 slams into the forefront of my mind. Ignore any sound that resembles a human voice. Trust the soundproofing. But this is different from the woman's cry. This sound is pure, joyful. My mind immediately flashes to my niece Sophia, how she would laugh like that when I pushed her on the swing. It's a sound engineered for temptation, a perfect lure. My foot instinctively eases off the accelerator. My body wants to stop, to help, to find the source of that impossible, beautiful sound. It's a child, alone in the jungle. But Jonas's frantic scrawl burns in my mind. It's a trap. I slam my fist on the dashboard. No, I whisper, my voice hoarse. No. I force my foot back down on the pedal. The engine groans in protest and then roars. I fix my eyes on the white line of the road, using it as a lifeline. The laughter continues, keeping perfect pace with the truck. It even seems to get louder, more insistent, as if it's offended by my rejection. It's a sound of pure psychological warfare. It's not just a lure for a bandit. It feels like the forest itself is mocking me, using my own humanity, my own memories of love and family as a weapon against me. I drive for what feels like an hour with the phantom sound of a child's laughter just outside my window before it finally, gradually, fades away into the cacophony of the jungle, leaving me shaking and drenched in a cold sweat. The road stays quiet for a while after that, long enough for me to almost convince myself it was an auditory hallucination, long enough for a sliver of hope to return. Maybe that was the worst of it. Maybe I passed the test. And then, my headlights catch movement. Something lurches out of the undergrowth and onto the asphalt about 100 meters ahead. My blood runs cold. It's a capybara, the giant rodent common to this area. But it's wrong. Horribly wrong. Its body is the right size, but its legs are too long, too thin, like a spider's. They bend at angles that defy biology. It moves with a jerky, unnatural gait, like a broken marionette. It stops in the very center of my lane and turns its head. Its eyes are massive, luminous, glowing with a sickly yellow light. They aren't the eyes of an animal. They are the eyes of something ancient and utterly devoid of anything I would recognize as life. It just stands there, waiting. Rule number 11. Under no circumstances should you stop for fauna. Maintain your speed and trajectory. My breath hitches. This is what Jonas saw, isn't it? Something that wears the skin of an animal but isn't. The thing doesn't move. It simply stares, its glowing eyes promising things my mind can't even begin to comprehend. My foot hovers over the brake. Every sane instinct is screaming at me to stop, to swerve, to do anything but continue on this collision course. But the rules and Jonas's fate are a stronger imperative. The road is the vein, we are the blood. I am just a corpuscle, and my only job is to flow. I let out a choked sob, close my eyes for a fraction of a second, and push the accelerator to the floor. The sound of the impact is sickening. It's not a single thud. It's a series of wet, cracking, grinding noises that travel up through the frame of the truck and into my bones. The vehicle shudders violently. I feel the phantom sensation of something dragging underneath for a moment before the tires catch again. I'm hyperventilating, fighting the urge to vomit all over my dashboard. My hands are shaking so badly I can barely hold the wheel straight. It takes every ounce of my willpower to force my eyes to the rearview mirror, and I see nothing. The road behind me is pristine. No blood, no body, no trace of the horrific thing I just pulverized. It was never there. The physical impact was a hallucination. A phantom punch delivered directly to my sanity. I'm starting to unravel. I feel it, like a thread being pulled from a tapestry. The line between what is real and what is not is blurring into a meaningless gray smudge. That's when the radio crackles to life, not the soft rhythmic static from before. This is harsher, louder, and inside the noise there are voices, dozens of them all talking over each other. I hear snippets of German, what sounds like Japanese, Latin, and another language that is nothing but harsh clicks and deep, guttural fricatives. It's a Tower of Babel broadcast from the heart of hell. I reach to shut it off, but my hand freezes. Through the cacophony, one voice begins to rise, cutting through the others with impossible clarity. It's a woman's voice. A voice I haven't heard in 5 years, except in my dreams. A voice I know better than my own. It's my mother. "Marco," she says, her voice as warm and loving as it was the last time I saw her in that sterile hospital room. "Marco, meu filho, pare o caminhão. Estou com tantas saudades, meu querido. Pare, venha me ver." "Marco, my son, stop the truck. I miss you so much, my dear. Stop, come see me." A sound escapes my throat, a wounded animal noise. Tears are streaming down my face, hot and fast. It can't be. It's a trick. It's the forest, the road, the thing out there playing its most cruel card yet. But it sounds so real. The exact timbre of her voice, the gentle lilt of her accent. It's her. "Mai?" I whisper, my voice cracking. I'm a child again, lost in the dark. The voice continues, soft and pleading, begging me to stop, telling me she's waiting for me just beyond the trees. This is it. This is the breaking point. This is how they get you. This is what happened to Jonas. But I need proof. I need to know that I'm not completely insane. With a shaking, fumbling hand, I grab my phone, swipe to the audio recorder, and hit the big red button. I hold the phone's microphone up to the truck's speaker, capturing the impossible sound of my dead mother's voice whispering sweet poison into the dark cab. I let it record for a full minute. My own sobs and ragged breaths a pathetic counterpoint to her serene, loving words. Then, as suddenly as it began, her voice is gone, swallowed by the multilingual static, which then fades back into the simple, clean silence of an open channel. My tears stop. A cold, terrifying clarity washes over me. I stop the recording. My thumb hovers over the play button. This is the moment of truth. Either there is a ghost in my machine, or there is a ghost in my mind. I take a deep breath. I press play. I turn the phone's volume all the way up and hold it to my ear. The recording is crystal clear. I can hear the low, bassy rumble of the Scania's engine. I can hear the soft hiss of the air conditioning, and I can hear the sound of a man weeping, his breath catching in desperate, ragged gasps. I can hear myself. But there's nothing else. The recording is clean. There is no static. There are no jumbled languages. And there is no voice of my mother. There is only the sound of my own solitary descent into madness. The technology isn't failing. It's working perfectly, and it has just delivered its verdict. The horror isn't coming through the radio anymore. It's being broadcast directly into my skull. Log entry 3. I've stopped numbering the days. The sun is just a temporary interruption of the darkness, where the real work gets done. Sleep is a luxury I can no longer afford. It's an unguarded flank, a moment of weakness I am certain will be exploited. The waystation cot feels less like a bed and more like a mortuary slab. So I stay awake. I drink bitter instant coffee that tastes like ash, and I work. The recording from my phone was not a defeat. It was a revelation. It was the single most terrifying and most clarifying piece of data I have ever received. The enemy is not in the jungle. The monster is not on the road. The war is inside my own skull, and I am losing territory with every passing kilometer. The realization has brought a strange, cold calm. The frantic animal fear is gone, replaced by the grim, focused obsession of a field surgeon operating on himself. If my mind is the battlefield, then my memories, my senses, my very consciousness are the weapons being turned against me. I will not be a passive victim. I will understand the nature of my own executioner. My new home is not the driver's seat, but the small fold-down table in the sleeper cab. It's covered in maps, printouts, and pages torn from a fresh notebook. And in the center of it all, like a holy text, is Jonas Ferreira's black logbook. I have read it a dozen times, no longer as a horror story, but as a schematic. Jonas was a victim, yes, but he was also the first researcher. His descent into madness was a failed experiment, and I am the next test subject. I must learn from his mistakes. I have taped a large map of the BR-319 to the wall of the cab. With a red marker, I have plotted the location of every incident. The first sighting of the blue lights, the phantom cry of the woman, the laughter of the child, the deformed capybara, my mother's voice on the radio. A pattern is emerging. The phenomena are not random. They are clustered around specific, geographically unremarkable points on the route, long straightaways, gentle curves, places with no distinguishing features. They are not ambushes in the traditional sense. They feel more like scheduled appointments. I've turned my attention to the rules. I've written each of the 17 rules on a separate index card and arranged them on the table, moving them around like a general planning a campaign. Before, I saw them as a list of prohibitions. Now I see them as a catechism, a set of ritualistic responses to an entity that defies conventional interaction. Rule number 3, extinguish all lights. This is not hiding. This is a gesture of submission, a way of saying, I am not a threat, I am blind before you. Rule number 7, ignore the voices. This is not a defense against a trick. This is a refusal to engage in communication, to deny the entity a foothold in my acoustic senses. Rule number 11, maintain your speed. This is not about road safety. This is a rejection of its physical incursions into my reality, a refusal to acknowledge the impossible thing it shows me. We are not driving through its territory. We are performing a rite of passage, and these rules are the prayers we must recite to be allowed through. Jonas failed because he stopped praying. He stopped the truck, he broke the ritual. He tried to have a conversation with God or the devil and was annihilated by the answer. The spirals that fill the last pages of Jonas's book have become my obsession. They are not the doodles of a madman, they are a language. I've spent hours tracing them, trying to understand their syntax. They are not simple swirls. They are complex, logarithmic spirals, like the arms of a galaxy, the shell of a nautilus, or the cochlea of a human ear. They are patterns of growth, of perception. Jonas wrote, The spirals are in the sound. I can hear the shape of them. He wasn't being poetic. I think he had begun to perceive the raw data of the universe, the underlying geometry of reality that this entity broadcasts, and it overloaded his senses. He tried to translate an impossible concept into a form he could understand, and this was the result. This methodical work, this cold analysis, keeps the terror at a manageable distance. It gives me the illusion of control. But my investigation always leads back to the one variable I cannot analyze from afar, the cargo. The sealed grey 20-ton container locked to my trailer. It is the silent passenger on this journey. Synapse was clear. Under no circumstances am I to approach it, inspect it, or attempt to learn its contents. But all my data points to it. The phenomena are not happening to me. They are happening around the truck that is carrying this specific container. My paranoia, my psychological decay, is not the goal of the entity in the jungle. It is merely collateral damage. I am the wrapper on the candy. During my last stop at Waystation Delta, in the harsh, sterile glare of the sodium lamps, I broke that rule. I had to. I left the safety of the cab and walked the length of my trailer, my boots crunching on the gravel. The night was hot and humid, the air thick enough to drink, buzzing with the sound of a million unseen insects. But as I drew closer to the container, the sound began to change. The insect noise died away, creating a perimeter of absolute silence that extended about 10 feet from the container's surface. The air grew cold. Not just cool, but a deep, penetrating cold that felt like it was leaching the heat from my bones. The surface of the container was a seamless, matte gray metal I didn't recognize. There were no rivets, no welds, no markings of any kind. It looked like it had been forged from a single, massive block of material. I reached out a trembling hand and touched it. The cold was shocking, like plunging my hand into a bucket of ice water. It wasn't just a surface cold, it was a profound absence of heat. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the vibration. It was a hum so low on the frequency spectrum that I felt it in my teeth and my sternum before I could consciously identify it as a sound. It was a deep, resonant subharmonic thrum that seemed to vibrate in sympathy with the base code of my own biology. It felt ancient and wrong, and in that hum, I heard it. The same pattern as Jonas's spirals. It was the sound of the spirals. I pulled my hand back as if I'd been burned, a gasp catching in my throat. I stood there shivering in the tropical heat, staring at the grey box, the blue lights, the voices, the deformed animals. They weren't interested in Marco Ribeiro, the trucker. They were a welcoming party, or a pack of jackals. They were drawn to this thing. I'm not a ferryman, I'm a zookeeper, and I'm transporting something from one cage to another. My obsession demanded more. My fear had been cauterized by a desperate need for knowledge. I was no longer just a driver trying to get to the end of the road. I was an unwilling scientist, and this entire route was my laboratory. I decided to conduct an experiment. I had to test the limits, to see what would happen if I altered the variables of the ritual. The next night, on a stretch of road where I knew the lights would appear, I did something different. Instead of waiting for them to manifest, I anticipated them. I pulled the truck over to the shoulder, the engine idling softly. I killed the headlights, plunging the road into darkness, and then I got out. The air that hit my face was a solid wall of heat and humidity. The noise of the jungle was overwhelming, a chaotic, living symphony. I walked a few paces from the truck and just stood there, on the edge of the asphalt, a tiny, insignificant piece of flesh and bone against the infinite blackness of the forest. I was offering myself up. I was breaking the spirit of the law, if not the letter. The rule was to coast, to be a passive ghost. I was stationary, an active, waiting observer. For a long time, nothing happened. The jungle just sang its mad song. I began to feel foolish, exposed. Then the silence fell. Just like at the way station, the insect noise just stopped. A pocket of dead air, and in that silence they appeared. Not 3 lights this time, a dozen, maybe more. They didn't just flicker into existence. They coalesced out of the darkness, soft blue orbs of varying sizes, drifting between the trees. They were not for me. I felt that with an absolute soul-crushing certainty. They ignored me completely. My presence was as irrelevant as a stone on the road. They moved with a slow, coordinated grace, arranging themselves into a complex, shifting pattern. It was a constellation, a living star chart that depicted a sky I had never seen. It was breathtakingly beautiful and utterly terrifying. They were communicating, not with me, but with the silent passenger in the grey box behind me. I was witnessing a conversation between incomprehensible things, spoken in a language of light and geometry. The low subharmonic hum from the container seemed to intensify, to answer the silent call of the lights. The air between the truck and the forest grew tense, electric. I felt like a microbe caught between two colossal magnetic poles. I was nothing. My struggles, my fear, my sanity. It was all completely and totally irrelevant to the cosmic transaction taking place. The horror of malevolence is one thing, but the horror of utter, absolute indifference is a deeper and more profound terror. It decenters you from your own reality. I was not the protagonist of my own story. I was a footnote in theirs. I stumbled back to the cab, my heart a cold, leaden weight in my chest. The experiment was a success. It had revealed a devastating truth. But it had also alerted them. Not the lights, not the container, but the intelligence that permeates this road. It had noticed that the lab rat was starting to take notes, and it decided to change the parameters of the experiment. The attacks became more personal, more intimate. It found the cracks in my sanity and began to pry them open with surgical precision. It happened at the next way station. I was in the small, grim bathroom, splashing cold water on my face. I looked up into the cheap, rust-spotted mirror, and my reflection was wrong. It moved a fraction of a second behind me. I raised my right hand. The man in the mirror raised his right hand a heartbeat later. A cold dread, sharp and familiar, pricked at my skin. I stared unblinking into my own eyes. I didn't move, and the reflection smiled. A wide, predatory grin that I was not making. My blood turned to ice. Then, the face in the mirror flickered, like a bad television signal. For a single, soul-shattering second, it wasn't my face. It was a gaunt, hollow-cheeked man with eyes wide with an eternity of screaming. His mouth was open, but no sound came out. It was the face of Jonas Ferreira. His silent scream was for me. A warning from the other side of the glass. A premonition. He wasn't gone. He'd been archived, collected, and his ghost was now a weapon to be used against me. I recoiled from the sink, crashing against the flimsy door, my breath coming in ragged, shallow gasps. I didn't scream. The sound was trapped behind my teeth. The barrier is gone. The line between outside and inside, between the phenomenon and my perception, has been erased. It's no longer just showing me things on the road or whispering in my ear. It is now inside my sensorium. It is wearing the faces of my past and my future. It is editing my reality moment by moment. The last vestiges of my professionalism have burned away, replaced by the single primal imperative to understand this before it consumes me completely. My expertise, my years of experience, my rational mind. They are not a shield. They are the cage. I understand with a clarity that borders on religious revelation just how profoundly the laws of nature are being violated here. And that knowledge is the very thing that is driving me insane. The entity out there, the intelligence in the static, the ancient thing in the box. It doesn't just want to break my mind, it wants to peel it apart, layer by layer, to see how it works. I'm no longer a ferryman or a zookeeper. I'm a dissection specimen, and the scalpel is already inside me. Log entry 4. The reflection in the mirror is my own again. I've checked 100 times. I flash my teeth, I raise my eyebrows, I force a grimace. The man in the glass obeys, but the trust is broken. I no longer believe what my eyes show me. The mirror is just another screen, and the broadcast can be hijacked at any moment. The encounter with Jonas's echo was the final piece of the puzzle. It was not a random scare tactic. It was a message, a threat. It was the entity telling me, this is your future. This is the designated end of this experiment. And in that moment, something inside me snapped. The fear is still there, a constant cold pressure behind my sternum, but it has been superseded by a white-hot, defiant rage. I will not be a passive specimen on a slide. I will not have my consciousness stripped away and archived like some corrupted file. If my mind is to be the prize in this war, then I will use it as a weapon until the last moment. My sanity is a resource I am now willing to spend. My command center in the sleeper cab is a shrine to my obsession. Jonas's logbook is open to the final, frantic page. The ink-blotted spirals a constant reminder of the price of failure. My own notebooks are a chaotic storm of diagrams, timelines, and half-formed theories. The map on the wall is a spiderweb of red ink, connecting points of contact, cross-referencing my experiences with Jonas's. For 72 hours I have not slept. I've existed on a diet of stale crackers, lukewarm water, and a terrifyingly potent cocktail of caffeine pills and sheer adrenaline. And in the feverish clarity of profound exhaustion, I have finally seen it. The pattern, the grand design. It was there all along, hidden in plain sight, and I was too busy reacting to individual threats to see the shape of the war. I was wrong about the rules. I was so profoundly, fundamentally wrong. I saw them as a list of defenses, a shield. They are not. They are a script, a liturgy. They are the precise ritualistic actions required to perform a ceremony, and the entire 800-kilometer length of the Rota Sombra is the temple. I began to map it out, not by distance, but by action. The journey begins with a period of simple driving, an overture. Then at a specific sector, the entity makes its first move, a subtle sound, a flicker of light. This is the invocation. My response, dictated by the rules, is the first prayer. Rule number 7. Ignore the voice. I am not defending myself. I am showing deference by refusing to speak out of turn. Rule number 3. Extinguish the lights. I am not hiding. I am genuflecting, averting my gaze from the face of the divine. Rule number 11. Maintain your speed. I'm not callously running over an animal. I'm demonstrating unwavering faith, refusing to be distracted by earthly illusions cast to test my devotion. Each event is a verse, and each rule is the response in a call and response ceremony that lasts for 12 agonizing hours every night. Jonas didn't just fail. He committed blasphemy. He stopped the truck. He ended the prayer mid-verse. He stepped out of the procession and tried to speak directly to the God. The consequences were not a punishment. They were a logical outcome. You do not interrupt a nuclear reaction to ask it a question. You are simply erased by the energy you have disrespected. This horrifying epiphany has recontextualized everything. Synapse logistics. They are not my employers. They are a priesthood, a cult with a corporate charter. And the ferrymen, me and Jonas and God knows how many others before us, we are not truckers. We are acolytes. We are the initiates tasked with performing the most sacred and the most dangerous of rituals, moving a relic from one holy site to another, straight through the heart of the god's domain. And the cargo, the cold, silent, grey box. It is not a passive object. It is a holy relic, a piece of a different god, or perhaps a captured demon. It is something this entity in the jungle desperately wants or desperately fears. My journey is a high-stakes diplomatic mission between forces beyond human comprehension, and I am the unwitting, expendable ambassador. This knowledge is a heavier burden than any fear. The fear of being killed by a monster is simple, primal, but the existential dread of being an insignificant cog in a cosmic machine, a microbe facilitating a transaction between titans, is a weight that crushes the soul itself. My life, my sanity, my very existence has no intrinsic value. It is measured only by my ability to correctly recite the liturgy and complete the ceremony. So what does a man do when he realizes his only value is in his obedience? He can continue to obey, to be the good little acolyte and hope to survive the night. Or he can seize the only power he has left, the power to choose sacrilege, the power to change the prayer, the power to get the god's attention. I cannot fight this thing, I cannot defeat it, but I can force it to reveal itself. I can get an answer. It's a suicide mission, I know that, but it feels better than the alternative, a slow, passive descent into becoming another screaming ghost in the machine. I have a new plan. I am no longer just a driver. I am a heretic. The opportunity comes 2 nights later. I feel the shift in the atmosphere, the familiar drop in ambient noise, the electric tension in the air. This is one of the designated points on my map, a place where a major verse of the liturgy is due to be performed. According to Jonas's log, this is where he saw something that made him write, "It looks like a man made of TV static and wrong angles." I take a deep, shuddering breath. My hands are slick on the steering wheel, but my resolve is a core of cold iron in my gut. I see it from a distance, a shape, standing in the middle of the road, perfectly illuminated by my high beams. My heart seizes in my chest. It is vaguely humanoid in the same way a scarecrow is vaguely humanoid. It has a head, a torso, 2 arms, 2 legs, but the proportions are subtly wrong. The arms are too long, the legs jointed in a way that suggests they could bend forwards as easily as backwards. And it has no features. Its surface is a chaotic, shimmering vortex of what looks like visual noise, a roiling, 3-dimensional field of black and white static. It does not reflect the light from my headlights. It seems to absorb it, to feed on it. It is a hole in the shape of a man, a wound in reality. Rule number 12, a rule I have not yet had to follow, flashes in my mind. It is written in bold, underlined text on the protocol card. Should you encounter a stationary humanoid obstruction, engage the auxiliary horn, button 2B, for 3 short bursts and proceed without deviation. It will move. Do not stop. Do not slow down. Your momentum is your shield. The liturgy is clear. Announce your presence with the ritual chimes and proceed with unwavering faith. I am supposed to drive through it, but the heretic in me has other ideas. My foot, against every screaming instinct for survival, moves from the accelerator to the brake. The massive truck groans as the air brakes engage, the sound a monstrous violation of the ritual silence. I bring the 70-ton rig to a slow, deliberate halt, the front of the truck stopping no more than 50 feet from the static figure. The entity does not react. It simply stands there, a silent, shimmering void. My engine is a low, throbbing rumble in the sudden, crushing silence. This is it, the point of no return. Jonas stopped, and he was erased. I am stopping, but I will not be erased. I will be the one who asks the question. With a hand that feels disconnected from my own body, I unbuckle my seatbelt. I push open the heavy cab door. The hinges creak like the gates of a crypt. I step out onto the asphalt. The air is cold, unnaturally so. The oppressive humidity of the Amazon is gone, replaced by a dry, sterile cold that smells of ozone and dust, like the air after a lightning strike. The cacophony of the jungle is silent. Not just quiet, it is gone. There is no sound, no insects, no frogs, no distant animal calls. The only sound in the entire universe is the low idle of my truck's engine and the frantic bird-like flutter of my own heart. I walk forward, my heavy boots sounding like hammer blows on the pavement. I walk away from the light of my truck, towards the shimmering darkness of the figure. 10 feet away, I stop. Looking at it up close is an act of self-destruction. My brain, a machine evolved to recognize patterns in the natural world, faces, trees, predators, is trying to make sense of what it's seeing, and it is failing catastrophically. The static is not random, it is information, a torrent of information. I see fleeting images within the roiling chaos, the birth and death of stars, the crystalline structure of minerals that cannot exist, the anatomy of creatures with nervous systems made of light and sound. I see cities built on impossible geometries, where staircases descend to points higher than they began. And I see spirals. Everywhere, the logarithmic spirals of Jonas's madness, spinning and unfolding like a billion galaxies being born and dying in every second. My head throbs. A thin trickle of warm blood runs from my nose. To look upon it is to have your mind forcibly rewritten. It doesn't have a face. It has a truth. And it is a truth the human mind was not meant to contain. I raise a shaking hand. What? What are you? The words come out as a choked, pathetic whisper. I expect no answer. I expect to be torn apart, to have my consciousness siphoned from my skull, to become another screaming ghost. The figure does not speak. It does not move. It raises one of its impossibly long arms. It does not point at me. It points at the grey container on the back of my truck. And then it communicates. There is no sound. There is no language. There is only comprehension. A floodgate opens in the back of my mind, and a river of pure, unfiltered knowledge pours in. It is not a vision. It is not a voice. It is a direct, instantaneous data transfer, a conceptual download that bypasses my senses entirely. I understand. In a single, timeless moment, I understand everything, and that understanding is an agony beyond any physical pain. I understand that the universe I know is a lie. Reality is not a stable, solid construct. It is a thin, fragile membrane, a shimmering soap bubble, and outside of it is not nothingness but everythingness, an infinite, chaotic ocean of possibility, of raw, untamed existence. And in that ocean swim things, beings so ancient and vast that our entire galaxy is but a mote of dust in their perception. They are not evil. They are not good. They are simply real. And we, in our tiny, stable bubble of physics, are the anomaly. The jungle is not just a jungle. It is a place where the membrane is thin, a place where this other reality, this true reality, bleeds through. The being in front of me is not a creature in the biological sense. It is a projection, a localized, semi-stable knot in space-time, a temporary antibody sent by this larger reality to investigate a contamination. And the contamination is the cargo, the thing in the grey box. I understand what it is now. It's a seed, a piece of another bubble, another stable reality with its own laws, its own physics, from somewhere else in the infinite ocean. It is a thing of order and structure, an invasive species, and its very presence here is a cancer, warping the local reality around it. The coldness, the silence, it is the wrongness of its physics asserting itself against this world. I understand my role. The Rota Sombra is not a road. It is a surgical scar, a line of containment. The ritual I perform every night is not a prayer of appeasement. It is a quantum process. The sequence of actions, the lights, the sounds, the momentum, creates a specific resonant frequency, a moving quarantine field that insulates the seed from the surrounding reality, allowing it to be transported without causing a catastrophic immune response from the local cosmos. Synapse logistics. They are not a cult. They are something far more terrifying. They are gardeners, or perhaps exterminators. They are moving this invasive seed to a place where it can either be studied, neutralized, or deplanted. The thought is so monstrous it almost stops my heart. The information flood lasts only for a second, but it rewrites decades of my existence. The figure lowers its arm. The direct contact is broken. I collapse to my knees on the cold asphalt, clutching my head. Blood is pouring from my nose and my ears. My skull feels like it's about to split open. I look up, and the figure is gone. Vanished. The sound of the jungle crashes back in, a deafening wave of insect noise and animal calls. I stumble back to my truck, my limbs clumsy and uncoordinated, like a puppet with its strings cut. I haul myself into the cab, my entire body shaking with a violent, uncontrollable tremor. I am broken, but I am not dead. I am changed. I sit in the driver's seat, the engine still idling, and I look at the world. And it is not the same world I saw 5 minutes ago. The colors are wrong. The green of the jungle is a shade too vibrant, a frequency my eyes shouldn't be able to perceive. The hum of the engine has layers, harmonics and subharmonics I could never hear before. I look at my own hands on the steering wheel, and I can almost see the shimmering haze of the bioelectric field around them. The knowledge has not been stored in my brain like a memory. It has been installed. It has given me new drivers for my senses. I am seeing, hearing, feeling the world in a higher resolution, and it is a nightmare. I look at the radio, the one I had shut off. I turn the knob. The familiar sound of multilingual static fills the cab. But it is not static, not anymore. I can hear it. Beneath the noise there is syntax, grammar, a complex recursive language made of clicks, tones and whispers. It's the language of the spirals, the language of the true reality. And for the first time, to my absolute and utter horror, I am beginning to understand it. The contagion is complete. The knowledge is a parasite, and it is now looking at the world through my eyes. Log entry, final. The designation no longer matters. Time has become a dimension I can perceive, not just experience. I see the moments behind me, a shimmering wake of causality. I see the moments ahead, a branching river of probabilities. And I see that all branches of my own future flow into the same inevitable sea. The heretic has had his revelation. The specimen has been catalogued. Now all that remains is the delivery. The drive is different now. The cab of my truck is no longer a shield or a cage. It is a sensory deprivation tank that has failed. The world is pouring in. The so-called laws of physics, which once seemed like immutable truths, now feel like local customs, quaint and arbitrary. I can see the weak points in the fabric of reality, the shimmering stress fractures where the impossible could decide to bleed through. The leaves on the trees are not just green, they are a complex symphony of quantum states, and their photosynthetic process is a scream of consumption so loud it's a wonder the whole world can't hear it. My body is an unfamiliar machine. The constant thrum of my own heart is a crude, inefficient pump. The hiss of air in my lungs is a clumsy bellows. But the new hardware, the knowledge installed in my neural pathways, is running with silent, terrifying efficiency. The static from the radio is no longer a nuisance. It is a constant, flowing stream of data. It is the voice of the true reality, the background radiation of the cosmos, and it speaks in the language of mathematics and pure concept. It is not speaking to me. I am simply an antenna, now properly tuned to the broadcast. It speaks of eons and gravities, of life that exists in the heart of stars, of consciousness that is woven into the fabric of space-time itself. It describes the thing in the container behind me as a cacophony in the silence, an unwanted symmetry, a shard of a dead dream. It describes me as the soft machine, the ephemeral vessel, the breathing cage. It does not hate me. It does not even notice me. My existence is a rounding error in its calculations. I'm driving towards the final way station, the terminus point designated in my contract, a place called Installation Keter, a fitting name, I now realize. In the esoteric texts I skimmed in my youth, Keter is the crown, the highest emanation, the point of absolute unity with the divine. It is the beginning of all things, or in this case, the end. My rage has cooled, sublimated into a state of resigned, crystalline despair. My defiance was a child's tantrum in the face of a hurricane. I demanded an answer from the universe, and the universe answered. And that answer has hollowed me out, scoured me clean of everything that was Marco Ribeiro. All that is left is the messenger and the message, fused into a single, damned entity. My only remaining human impulse is this: to leave this record, to etch this story into a piece of plastic and data, a futile message in a bottle thrown into an ocean of ignorance, a warning that will never be understood by those who need it most. I can feel the final destination approaching, not because I see it on the GPS. The device is a child's toy, its simplistic representation of the world an insult to the multi-layered, terrifying reality I now perceive, but because the static is changing its tone. The broadcast is intensifying. The local reality is growing more agitated. The blue lights in the forest are no longer confined to the tree line. They drift across the road now, passing through my truck, as if it weren't there. They are no longer just orbs. I can see their true form, shimmering just beyond the edge of normal perception. They are complex, multidimensional shapes, tesseracts and hyperspheres of pure thought, and they are converging on my position. The deformed animals are back, loping alongside the truck in the darkness. I see them for what they are. Not hallucinations, but failed attempts by the local reality to comprehend and replicate the foreign biology of the seed in my cargo, resulting in grotesque, cancerous parodies of life. They are tumors with legs. And they are all being drawn to this final point on the map. This is my last chance to speak as myself, or what's left of me. I am approaching Installation Keter. I know now what is in the cargo. I know what I have become. And I think I know what Synapse Logistics truly is. They are not priests. They are not exterminators. They are prospectors. and they have found a new kind of gold. I'm asking you, whoever you are, listening to this in some safe, sane future, theorize in the comments. Guess what they want with a piece of another universe and a human mind infected by a cosmic truth? Post your theories. Subscribe to this channel. Someone has to piece it together when I'm gone. Someone has to know that the world they live in is a beautiful, fragile lie. This is my last transmission. The truth must be told, even if it burns the one who tells it. The road ends, not at a gate, but at a wall. A seamless, towering cliff of black, non-reflective concrete that rises out of the jungle, disappearing into the low-hanging clouds. It feels older than the forest, as if the trees had grown around it. As I approach, a section of the wall silently retracts into the ground, revealing a tunnel bathed in a harsh, white, shadowless light. I drive the rig inside. The moment the trailer clears the entrance, the massive door slides shut behind me. The sound a deep, resonant thum that seals me off from the world. The jungle noise, the static, the hum of the cosmos, it all cuts off. The silence in here is absolute, artificial. It is the silence of a tomb. The tunnel opens into a vast, cavernous space. It's not a warehouse, it's a laboratory or a vivisection chamber. The ceiling is 100 feet high, lost in a network of gantries and conduits. The air smells of ozone and antiseptic. And there are people, dozens of them, all clad in sterile, white, clean suits, their faces obscured by reflective visors. They move with a quiet, unnerving purpose. Robotic arms descend from the ceiling, their multi-jointed limbs moving with an insect-like grace. They are not unhitching the trailer. They are dismantling it, using cutting lasers and magnetic clamps to peel away the chassis, layer by layer, to get to the grey container at its heart. None of them look at me. My part in the ceremony is over. I am just the disposable vessel. I sit in the cab watching them work and I wait. After what feels like an hour, the cab door is opened from the outside. A man stands there. He is not wearing a clean suit, but a simple, impeccably tailored black suit. He has the same bland, forgettable face as the recruiter who first hired me. He is one of them, a manager, a handler. He gives me a thin, clinical smile that does not reach his eyes. "Mr. Ribeiro," he says, his voice perfectly calm, perfectly modulated. "On behalf of Synapse Logistics, I'd like to thank you for your service. You have performed above all expectations. Please come with us." I don't move. I just look at him. My new senses are screaming at me. I can see the intricate dance of the micro-expressions on his face. I can hear the subtle variations in his heart rate. I can smell the faint chemical trace of the suppressants in his system, designed to keep him calm. He is a man wearing a mask of absolute control over a core of profound, abject terror. He is terrified of me. "What is this place?" I ask. My voice sounds alien, a discordant harmony of my own vocal cords and the residual static that still echoes in my neural pathways. The man's smile does not falter. "This is a place of research, Mr. Ribeiro, a place where we learn to read the source code of the universe. For centuries, humanity has been staring at the shadows on the cave wall. We have chosen to turn around and face the fire." "The cargo," I say, my voice a low rasp. "It's a seed, an invasive species." "Aptly put," he says, with a small, appreciative nod. "A coherent piece of an alternate physical reality. Incredibly rare, incredibly dangerous, and incredibly valuable. But it is inert, useless, without a key, without a translator." He pauses, and his gaze becomes sharp, analytical. He is no longer looking at me. He is looking at what I contain. "That was the purpose of the cargo, Mr. Ribeiro. It was never the primary object of this transport, it was the bait." The cold, final truth lands with the force of a physical blow. "The lure," I whisper, the words of my own warning coming back to haunt me. "Precisely. The seed emits a specific, unique quantum resonance. The entity you encountered, the local guardian, if you will, is drawn to it. Its consciousness is too vast, too alien to be captured or studied directly. But in its attempt to investigate the seed, it must project a fragment of itself, a probe, an infinitesimally small piece of its awareness." He takes a step closer. I can smell his fear. The problem has always been finding a stable medium in which to capture that probe. We tried electronics, gels, cloned neural tissues. They all collapsed instantly. The data stream was too overwhelming, but the human mind, specifically a certain kind of human mind, resilient, stubborn, analytical, pathologically curious, it doesn't just break, it adapts. It rewrites itself to accommodate the new data. It synthesizes. The pieces of my journey, my paranoia, my investigation, my defiance, all click into a final, horrific mosaic. My struggle was not a struggle. It was the process. All the other drivers, I say, my voice hollow. Jonas, failed prototypes, the man says, with a dismissive wave of his hand. Their minds shattered. A psychotic break is not a stable synthesis. The probe burns out the host. But you didn't just break, Mr. Ribeiro. You built a bridge. You established a stable, symbiotic connection. You didn't just transport the bait. You successfully caught the fish. The ritual you performed every night wasn't just to protect the seed. It was to calibrate you, to attune your consciousness, to weaken the barriers, to prepare you to become the perfect receptacle. I stare at my own hands, resting on my lap. They seem so fragile, so human, but I can feel it now. The other thing coiled in the back of my consciousness. It is not a parasite, it is a passenger, and it has finally reached its destination. I am the package. My body, my mind, my soul, this is the true cargo. And now, I ask? The man's smile returns wider this time. It is the smile of a scientist who has just proven his most audacious theory. Now, the real work begins. We will learn its language. We will understand its physics. We will harness its power. You are the Rosetta Stone for a new reality, Mr. Ribeiro. You are the most important man who has ever lived. You are the key that will unlock the fire of the gods. They lead me from the truck. Two figures in clean suits take my arms, their grip firm but not violent. I do not resist. There is no point. I am a relic being moved to my display case. They guide me down a long, white, sterile corridor. The bland man walks ahead of me. My new senses are on fire. I can feel the power coursing through the walls of this place. I can hear the thoughts of the people in the suits, not their words, but their base emotions, fear, awe, and a cold, clinical curiosity. They are taking me to a room, a chamber, my final destination. As we walk, I look at my hands again. They are starting to shimmer. The edges are blurring, losing their coherence. I can see the bones inside, not as a solid structure, but as a complex, vibrating lattice of energy. I try to make a fist and my fingers bend at an angle that is not humanly possible, then flow back into place. The synthesis is complete. The passenger is taking the wheel. My last human thought is a flicker of memory. My niece Sophia laughing on a swing, the sun in her hair. It is a beautiful, fragile, impossibly distant image, a shadow on the wall of a cave I can no longer return to. They bring me to a large, circular door. It irises open with a soft hiss. Inside is a white, empty, spherical room. The bland man turns to me one last time. "Don't be afraid, Marco," he says, using my first name for the first time. "You are not dying. You are simply becoming." They guide me into the center of the room. The door hisses shut behind me. I am alone, but not alone. The other is here. It is fully awake now. My voice, my human voice, whispers a single final word into the silence. Sophia. But another sound comes out with it, a low guttural click, a word in the language of the static. My head tilts back. I open my mouth, and a torrent of pure information pours out, not as sound, but as a visible distortion in the air, a wave of complex geometry and impossible color. I am speaking the source code of the universe. My survival was the trap. My consciousness is the prize, and the door I've opened will now allow something terrible and ancient to look through and to learn.